Chapter 2. Day 2. Monday. The next morning came quickly. Better look the part today, he thought. Ed pulled a savvy black suit from the closet, along with a pressed white shirt and tie. His shoes were patent leather and had a military shine. In general, Ed dressed to impress as a way of life, which he learned during his upbringing on the East Coast. He left his room, and as he passed through the hotel's lobby, he stopped off at the reservation desk. "Any messages for Ed Miller?" he asked. A middle-aged woman in her mid-50s said, "No, Mr. Miller, nothing here." He told her thanks, and then he turned and walked out of the hotel and got a cab. The cabbie made a sudden left-hand turn after 15 minutes of driving, and Ed spotted his destination up ahead. 332 Othello Street, the Army's headquarters. When the cab arrived, he stepped out of it, and two men hustled into it from the opposite side. The cabbie seemed delighted that he had another fare so quickly. Ed glanced at him and gave him a look that said, "Hey, you're on a roll." The cabbie smiled and said, "The fare is $14.65. Ed pulled out a $20 bill and handed it to him. "Keep the change," he said. He noticed that the young men in the cab were gabbing about an incident that happened in the coffee shop they had just left. They were saying something about an American woman who had been extremely rude to the cashier. Had either of them been the cashier, they said, they would have put the woman in check. Wow, Ed thought. Why do we Americans always get bent out of shape about everything? The Army's HQ was a historic piece of architecture. It was 3 stories high, and its windowsills, doors, and roof skyline had been painted with shades of tan colors. 2 huge oak trees stood directly in front of the first floor's main windows, one on each side of the main entrance. The trees displayed a powerful sense of security. They looked strong enough to deter someone from crashing into the building with a car or truck. Inside the building, Old English artwork from the medieval era covered the walls of the building's first level. Symbols, designs of swords and shields, and men of war dressed in full armor. The entrance's doors were made of Old English oak. Some of the decor illustrated particular events. In particular, the scene next to the left of the entrance got Ed's attention. It displayed 2 knights jousting to the death. Their lances pointed toward each other, and their stallions were charging with no restraint. In the next scene, the lance of the knight on the larger stallion pierced through the heart of his opponent. As the beaten knight fell from his mare, he grabbed hold of his adversary's lance. The scene led Ed to think about the fallen soldiers that he had seen in his time, those men and women in Afghanistan and Iraq, those on both sides of the battles. He, too, had been in that fallen state not too long ago. Luckily, he survived. The soldier on the wall, however, did not seem to be as lucky. Being a soldier was the life Ed chose. When he entered the MPF building, he knew what to expect. He had been in such buildings many times before. The first floor housed the military's personnel files and finance operations, and the mail room was there as well. The 3rd floor was vacant and shielded from any signals or transmissions. The 2nd floor was where he needed to go. He would get his operation orders there. Ed approached the information desk where he greeted a private. "I'm Sergeant Ed Miller," he said, "and I'm here to see Major Lewis." The NCO used his computer to confirm Ed's appointment. "Yes, sir, have a seat." He called someone on a phone. Soon, a female officer came from one of the rear offices. "Hello, Sergeant. I'm Lieutenant Erickson. The Major was called away, so I will be the one to brief you. Please, follow me." They walked up a staircase to the 2nd floor. "I hope your trip here has been a pleasant one," said Erickson, making light conversation, trying to fill the dead air. "Uneventful, you know." "Good flight in, nice accommodations," replied Ed. They reached the 2nd floor, then they passed through another oak door, which was freshly painted with a soft gray color and blended with the surrounding off-white walls. Upon entering the next room, which was the briefing room where Ed would get his operation orders, he saw a large vault in the center of the room. In front of it sat a huge, muscular soldier at a desk. His guns, that is, his arms, spread about 19 inches, and when he stood up, he had to be about 6 feet 6. He was a good-looking kid in his 20s and had a no-nonsense look on his face. Ed humorously whispered to the lieutenant, "I don't want to tangle with this guy." Lieutenant Erickson gave a smart chuckle and said, "I'll need you to place your phone and other articles in the basket before we go in." Her request was unnecessary. Ed was already relinquishing his phone and other items because he was so familiar with that drill. They entered the vault and sat at a table that had 2 chairs set around it and a computer on top. Lieutenant Erickson turned it on and then entered a password. She pulled out a folder and handed it to Ed and said, "Here is a profile of your team. Please get familiar with them. Your mission will be to protect Ambassador Sidney Ballantyne of St. Vincent along with his family. There have been threats against them recently. We suspect the threats must have something to do with the offshore drilling rights. Since then, the United States has turned its sights to implementing alternative sources of power and to using oil from the United States oil fields and from the Caribbean Sea. Caribbean countries have been scrambling to get in on the action. There's some nasty politics going on down here. The major players are BP, Mobil, Continental Resources Incorporated, Chevron, and Royal Dutch Shell. All of them are angling to get the oil rights for St. Vincent. There are a few others." Erickson paused, waiting for Ed to respond. "Who are the others trying to get the oil rights?" Ed asked. "They are some of the smaller Caribbean countries, and they have a lot to gain if the deal goes south. We suspect the threats are coming from them. As you know, St. Vincent's economy depends heavily on exporting its crop of bananas and on its tourism. The economy has taken a big hit during the last few years. The crops have been severely damaged by the increased hurricanes in the Caribbean. Scientists say the weather is due to global warming, and they anticipate things getting worse. The economy's second problem is that the country's tourism has been bashed with bad reviews stemming from the international fake news. False news reports have spread throughout social media. As much as we can tell, St. Vincent is being demonized by the competition through fake websites. Thus, this offshore oil contract is a big deal. Now, you are to meet Ambassador Ballantyne on Monday at the embassy on Delvaux Affairs Boulevard." Ed interrupted the lieutenant. "I'd like to bring in one of my own, someone I trust." "I don't see a problem with your request, Sergeant, but he must pass our qualifications, and I will need to run your request by Major Lewis." "Excellent," Ed said. Equipment organized on a wall caught Ed's eye, and he assumed it was for him. A pair of night vision goggles, a bulletproof vest, a government-issued cell phone, which would be linked directly to his team's phones. A 9mm Smith & Wesson automatic with 6.15 round clips and a few other gadgets. Ed finished up with the lieutenant and left the building. A cab approached, and he flagged it down. Ironically, it was the same driver who had brought Ed there. "Hello again, sir," said the cabbie. Ed echoed his greeting. "Hello again. I'd like you to drive me around and to show me some of the island." "With pleasure. Do you want a tour? I can show you the beaches, or maybe the shopping district, or maybe some of—" "No, not the tourist stuff. Something or somewhere I can get a feel or pulse for the everyday life here." Ed spent the next few hours exploring the island.